Hi everyone, I'm Pauline Boiteux and I'm a freelance material artist from France. I've been working for a few months now on different projects for Louis Vuitton, and it gave me a great opportunity to push further fabric creation and rendering process.
In this tutorial, we're going to create a painting generator using Substance Designer. The idea is to take any kind of concept art or picture and turn it into an oil on canvas. If we take a look at some reference pictures, we can see that the point is not really to get every tiny detail, but it's more about carrying like a mood, a feeling, as each brushstroke is going to represent something. As you can see, there's a large choice of bright colors, and without seeing every flowers or details, we can still feel the mood and the sunny feeling of the picture. To achieve those paintings, we're first going to create a brush stroke, and then using that one and a tile sampler, we're going to create the generator. In the end, you should be able to create different types of painting very quickly using a few pictures and Substance Designer. So the first thing we need to create that painting is a brush stroke. So we're going to create that from a simple shape, like so, and create some kind of rectangular shape, something like that. Once we get that part, we can actually use a Grange map to jack the edges a bit and add some more volume. To do so, we need to transform it just so it gets like horizontally aligned to our shape. So let's rotate this one and blend it on top. In a multiply mode, just like so. The thing is, I'd like to get like a lot of paint at the beginning, and like if the stroke is swiping the paint away, so at first I won't need that much noise at the beginning of the stroke. So I'm gonna use a gradient to create that effect and plug it in the opacity map to get that kind of result. Now, just to get not a straight edge on the left side, I'm actually going to reuse the same noise and blend it again. Like that. But the mask is going to be a leveled version of that gradient. I am going to invert it first, and then see blending mode in multiply, see how it looks. So I'll need it to be this far, keep the gradient like so. Perfect, now we can just simply level it. To get that straight edges worked around. We can also play with the brush pattern option of the Grange map to help us get something like that. Perfect. Now that we get that that almost opacity mask, we can work on the sides, because on each side it's really straight for now, but I'd like to give the impression that the paint is like pushed away as the brush pass through the painting. So to do that, we're going to create some kind of noise and a non-uniform blur. The noise is basically a gradient linear, that one, that I rotate and just simply put a level on it. That way we're going to work on the middle part of the brush and not the two sides. So I can just put the level like so, and using a Gaussian spot, I plugged in a blur, directional blur actually, so I can get those stripy effects. We're gonna blend those together. To get that kind of map, and this is gonna be the grayscale input for our non-uniform blur. So that brush, that thing right here, and as you see, it creates like some variations on each side. So let's crank up the intensity. You can also move the scale like so. Now that we get that part, we can level it and create that amount of paint on each side, as you can see. So once we did that, we are going to add some volume to it using a bevel. That way we keep the shape we created with all those tiny hair effects and still get a nice volume. Using a bit of smooth, something like that. Okay, now that we got this, we actually need to blend it with a gradient. Otherwise, the whole shape will be totally flat, and we want it to look like there's more paint on that side and less on that side. So we're going to put that gradient on top and actually invert it. Before putting it in a multiply mode, just like so. Once we get that, we can take the noise we created before back inside the shape, so we can need another blend and that noise and that same gradient from the beginning, for the same reason, just so we get like a full color here that gradients on that side. We're gonna put it in a multiply mode to get something like that. Now that we get that part, we are actually going to crease the middle of the stroke, just so it looks like the brush actually has a weight in the middle. To create that effect, we are simply going to reuse that that gradient that we have here and transform it a bit. Something like that. No tiling mode. And blend it with our shape right here in multiply. like so. That way we'll be able to invert that shape and blend it on top in a multiply mode again, so it looks like the brush goes through and the paint is dragged away. We can play a bit more with that gradient and the multiply, get it 2.5 for now. I mean, I think we'll be back on that brush a bit later just to adjust everything. That is just the first pass. Also, I think I'd like those edges to be a bit more thick, so maybe we could add a transform right here just to get it a bit thinner. Something like that should be okay. Now that we get that part done, we're gonna move that over here like so, and to get rid of that really straight edge, we're gonna use a slope and blur that version with a blurred version of it. Oop, grayscale one. Like so. Put the samples to the top and the intensity really low to get that kind of look. Okay. Now that we get that part, I'd like it to look a bit more rounded at the beginning. To do that, we can simply use a directional warp and that same gradient that we had here. So since we already transformed it here, I'm going to copy paste that one and make a reset transformation, rotate it, and see, keeping the directional warp in my 2D view, I can then click there and get that thing the right side. So as you can see, it gets rounder on that side. Oops. Let's boost it up a bit. And as you can see, I'm going through the square right now. So the easiest way to get rid of that is to use a transform just before. Once again, keeping the directional warp in your 2D view, and move that shape around, like so. So now we get that thing. We're gonna move bits to the left. Now we're gonna try to add some more noise in the middle using an anisotropic noise. That way we get that brushy effect everywhere. We can blur it with one L. And blend it back with the brush right here. Oops. And in the opacity map, we are actually going to reuse that same gradient that we had in the beginning, this one. Multiply. And it creates, as you can see, a bit more variation in the grays in the middle. Let's move that up. Now that we get that part, we are actually going to create first a mask to get like the real accumulation of color on one side. To do that, we're going to use a level and simply crush the whites a bit, like so, and erase some of the black, sorry, like so. Once we get that, we can simply remake some more noise. So we are going to need another anisotropic noise. and a directional noise to get some more tiny details. Let's go with that one. And if we blur this one, we're actually going to put the X amount to 1, just so I can get a straight lines. Something like that. And blend those two together. This one on top, this one bottom. And put that one, let's try an overlay. Yep, perfect. Should do the trick. Once we get that, we'll be able to blend those two together again. So what we're gonna need is that noise, blend in the background, and this one is going to be on top of it in a screen mode to get like the variation of colors. It will be a plain color right here, and get some variation as you go to the right. Let's see if we can smooth that gradient a bit. Yep, like so. Now all we need to do is to level that shape to become our opacity map. So let's get a level. Yes, something like that. And blend those two together. Like so. Once we did that, we can create a normal map from it. We're not actually going to use that normal map, but let's put it to 3 for now. And as you can see, our noise is really noisy, so let's get back. It's that one that needs to be blurred a bit. Always keep an eye on the end result. Yeah. To get something like that. That noise is really sharp too, but we're gonna come back to it later. We could even put a blur right here. Okay. Now that we got our normal map, we can actually create an 8 map out of it. So normal to 8 HQ. That way we already have a leveled brush. Now let's tweak a bit the parts. I think that one needs to come back at some point, because right here we are really flat and I'd like it to be a bit more contrasted. So just before the blur, let's try to blend it again just to see how it looks. And there's a bit more variations, that's better. Let's take a look. Okay. Once again, we're probably going to come back at that brush later, so we're gonna stop there for now. Now that we have that leveled version of the 8 map of our brush, we're gonna need to transform it in a color mode first and add some alpha to it. And that way we're going to be able to plug it in a tile sampler and use it like with its own opacity. Let's plug that thing in a gradient. And we're going to keep working with grays like so, except they're going to be a bit more contrasted. And we're going to need to shut down the background. So let's use that opacity map that we did before on top of it. Yeah, to get something like that. Okay. Now that we get that brush stroke, we need to get the alpha. To do that easily, we can just use a blend mode, put that one in the foreground and nothing in the background, and just that opacity map in the opacity. That way we get a transparent background. And that is our brush stroke. Let's clean up that thing a bit. That is some noise, that's that thing. Let's add a frame. Okay. Now that our brush stroke is created, we can get to the painting itself. We're actually going to use a picture to use as a base. So let's take that one, link. So this is going to be our first test, and then we'll try it with some other picture. Because the point of it is of the material is that whatever you plug in an input will create you'll be creating a painting out of it. So to do that, we need that painting and a tile sampler. We're actually going to need two of those. We're going to take a tile sampler color. The first one is going to be focused on the base color and the other one on the 8 map and normal map. So let's plug our brush stroke in the pattern input and our picture in the color map input. Now, in the tile sampler parameters, we're gonna swap the pattern from a square to pattern input, so we get those our brush stroke again. And then we're gonna take a look at the color section and get the color parameterization multiplier to 1. So as you can see, it samples the colors of the picture of your input and assign it to each brush stroke. So first of all, we're gonna need a lot more of those. So let's get back to our instance parameter and put the X amount to 100 and the Y amount to, let's say, 120. Just so it looks like a bit longer strokes. It is stretching the shape. So now that we get that thing, we need to rework the scale of it. And now it looks like it's pixelized. So that is the basic ID for the base color. Let's try and take a look in the output. like so. So the first thing we're gonna try to do here is to give each stroke a different direction, like to give the idea that the tree, for example, is painted on one direction, the flowers with another one, and the path with another one. To do that, we have to select those different areas and play with them in the vector map input right here. To do that, we are gonna need a grayscale version of that map. So let's get a grayscale conversion right here. We're gonna then blur it. And to get some flatter areas, because like here in the picture we have too many details and it wouldn't help a lot to use that map. So that's why we're going to blur it and then use the node that is named quantize grayscale right here. And what that node is doing is creating, like, as you can see here, it's on 3. So I have 3 levels of grays, like black, mid grays, and whites. So you can here choose the number of gray levels that you want. We're going to start with 10. And as you can see, it creates like some areas of flat grays. This will be way easier to get an edge detect over it. Get the edge roundness to 0 and the width to, let's say, 1.2. The idea here is to create different areas that we're gonna plug in a flood fill, and the flood fill is gonna give each zone a different gradient. That way we're going to be able to give directions for each of those areas. But first, for it to work in every cases, we have to get a frame, a black frame all over it. So let's take a shape with the scale to 0.99 so I can get that black frame and blend it on top like so. That way the flood fill node won't be able to fail. So let's call that one. And then we'll be able to get a flood fill to gradient like so. And playing with the angle variation, put it to 1. As you can see now, every zone has a different gradient and gives a direction. Now that we get that, we need to plug it in a normal map. At first you won't see much, but if we put the intensity to 100, it gives you those really shiny colors everywhere, and each color gives a direction. So we're going to plug that in our vector map input. But before we try it out, to get rid of those tiny areas that could create some artifacts in the picture, we're simply going to blur the normal map a bit. The more you're blurring the normal map, the more your strokes will look curved at the edges of the different zones. Also, if there's like too many of those, you can either swap the quantize level and like put it to 5 or 8, or simply add some more blur in the first grayscale, like so. Now let's take a look at how it goes in the tile sampler. If we get in the rotation section, we can put the vector map multiplier to 1. And as you can see now, in every area, the stroke will go one way or another, and they're not all the same way. So that is pretty okay. Let's put some random in it too, to 0.05. Okay, so this is going to be our vector map. Now that we did that, let's take a look at the position, because right now it still looks like there's a grid underneath everything, and I'd like it to be a bit more natural and organic. So let's put the position random to, let's say, 100 again. So you get those nice effects. As you can see, it gives like really nice curves around it. And you can see each areas everywhere flowing around. Okay, so that's a good start. Now, the thing I'd like is to get in those really bright areas that it looks like there's less work, but in the where there's tiny details like the leaves or the flowers, that there is some smaller brush strokes. To do that, we have to create a scaled map that we are going to plug right here. To do that, we're going to use that same grayscale here. We're going to take it out actually, because it's going to be used a lot. And plug it in a high pass grayscale. That way it gives you a flatter version of the grays. And as you can see, like in the really dark areas, that's where we're gonna have a lot of details, and where it's really bright, it's where it's gonna be like less brush strokes. So now all we have to do is to level it to get some bright whites and dark blacks, like so. Then we're going to blur it and do it again. Quality to 1. Another level. Same again, just to get bright whites and dark blacks. Okay, now let's try and plug it in the scale map input. I'm gonna frame this out. And now in the tile sampler, let's get in the size section right here and work the scale map multiplier right here. So as you can see, where the areas are black, it creates like tiny brush strokes, and everywhere else is like default scale. So that looks pretty okay, except it looks like we need the other way around. So let's try to invert it. Yeah, so as you can see, those flowers are no tiny details, and the rest is bigger strokes. Okay, now as you can see, since the brush stroke is on a transparent background, it the tile sampler gives you some black areas. To get rid of those, the first thing we can do is actually not put the multiplier to 1, but a bit lower. So let's get back into size and get it something like that. Crank up the scale a bit. like so. And to get rid of those tiny areas, you can actually reuse that bitmap and plug it in the background input all the way at the bottom. So it creates, as you can see, the picture is basically the background, so there's no more black underneath. Okay. Once we did that, we are actually going to rework the colors a bit. First of all, we're going to contrast a bit more. So let's get a contrast luminosity right here. Get a contrast to 0.05. Do not go, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if you go a bit higher than that, you can really quickly get really dark colors or really bright colors. As you can see, I go almost from all the way white to all the way black here, and it's not always the best looking thing. But for that part, I think it's going to be okay. And now what we have to do is to get a bit more saturation to get closer to our reference pictures, because it's usually really bright colors used. So yeah, look at those greens. Looks great. Okay, let's replace it. Okay, now that we get that, we are actually going to need the grayscale version of it. We could use that the same type of map to create the normal map, except on that one, since we have some really bright and really dark brush strokes, it would create like that one would be lower and that one would be higher, but they're on the same level. So we have to create a whole new tile sampler to do that. We can simply copy and paste that one, and instead of plugging our bitmap in the color map input and the background, we can simply just delete those two. Get back in the color section and put that parameter to 0 again. So that way, as you can see, we get all our strokes totally white with exactly the same parameters than the first one. So that's way easier for now. We're going to swap that thing, because as you can see that that picture is a really high resolution, so everything goes that way, and that one is a bit lower, so we're just going to get that thing the same size. So the normal and the base color are based on they have the same amount of detail in there. Okay, now that we get that tile sampler done right here, we are going to need it to slope our colors, because right now it looks really flat and I'd like those colors to blend a bit more together, so we can use a slope for that. Get our hue saturation right here and use that tile sampler as our slope. To do that, we need another grayscale conversion just to get that thing in grayscale. And now it's really noisy, but if we get the samples to the max and the intensity are really low, you can see it creates some really nice blending. And to get rid of that tiny noise, we can add a blur right there. And it creates, as you can see, some kind of patchy looking colors. Let's get a bit lower to 0.1, 0.50. In the middle, 0.125. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, great. Now that we have that result, first let's take a look at it. Yeah, looks good. And we have now a great base for our normal map. The first thing we need to do here is to get some more variations in those and get them flat. So in the tile sampler, we can actually use that opacity random thing just to get some more variations in those. And there's a luminance to create, as you can see, creates like some kind of level, different level of grays in those. Okay, and let's try to plug it in a normal. Let's take a look at it. For now, as you can see, it looks really round and sharp. So we're gonna play around with high pass just to get the volumes right. Okay, so now we have a really flat version and a too much volume version, so we're gonna blend those two together. We're going to use a normal combine here and another normal to get that one. So this will be our base and that one on top. Should look like that. So we get a bit more volume. It's the way we worked our opacity map that creates that kind of edge that is not really good looking. So let's go take a look at this. As you can see, there's like a really dark edge all around our brush stroke. So let's see if we can correct that. That one needs to be a bit lighter. Maybe we can blur that one a bit. And level it, just so the edges are a bit thinner than the actual shape. That helps a bit, but not that much. Let's work with that for now. So now that we have our two levels of details for the normal map, we actually need some base, because as you can see, there's still some black areas here, but we have colors. So we need to give the impression that it's like the original canvas underneath. To do that, we can simply use the mesh pattern. That is really useful for that kind of render. Let's take it in a transformation and in a normal map. And then we're going to use that map as an opacity for a normal blend. So it's called a normal blend. That one is going to be the top, that one the bottom, and that one the opacity map. Let's just put a level on it, so that in the black areas we'll have this pattern underneath. As you can see, the pattern is really big, so that's why I plugged the transformation right here, so I can take a look right here and just get it smaller. Yeah, that should do the thing. Let's try and take a look. Yeah, so now we can see the canvas underneath the paint where there's nothing. Okay. I'm just going to clean that up. So this is our roller. That thing is our base color. Like so. And now we actually could take a look at the roughness, because right now it's really shiny. So let's use our map right here, because we basically need the opposite of that map. So we're gonna start by inverting that map, not the blurred one, that one. And let's see how it looks. Let's get here. So it gives some more variation. That's not really visible for now. Let's take a level and get it a bit less shiny. So you can still feel like some patches of paint, but it feels dry underneath. Let's not go all the way to white and all the way to black. Okay, that looks fine for now. So this is going to be our roughness. And as you probably know, we won't need that metallic output for now. That being said, we are going to need an opacity map. So we're gonna take an output right here and assign the opacity. Perfect. The reason we'll need that opacity map is, imagine you'd like that that painting not to be a square but to be like a rectangle, for example. Well, let's try to do that. We're gonna use a shape like so. The scale will stay at 0.99, but we're going to play with the X and Y size, so we can get like rectangular shapes. Let's blend it out. Oh, I need to invert it and get some uniform color on top of it. So as you can see, I now have a black frame all over the picture. And that's totally fine. We just need, so that one is going to be our opacity map. Now let's take a look and view outputs into the view. So now we get that transparent frame all over the painting. And if we decided to be, I don't know, still square, but smaller, well, we can get a smaller section, or we can stay 2.99 and say we'd like it to be vertical, something like that. And that's pretty much it to get the opacity down. We just need to replace that thing. That way the brushes will change too. As you can see, it now reads that there's a border all over, so the brushes will swap direction in those sections. Let's put that back to 1. Okay. Now we have the base color, the normal roughness. Our 8 map is missing. And actually to give the look of a real canvas, like there's a mesh underneath it, we can simply use like a square with some bevel. We'll even actually reuse that one that is already here and add a bevel. We only need like a really few gray variations, so let's put it to minus 0.01. The thing is, since it's a really bright white, I mean it's totally white on top, we won't be able to have the volume of the brush stroke on top of it. So we need to level it a bit, just so it becomes some kind of gray. And then on top of it, we're gonna blend our brush volume. Oh, this one. Let's say in a heads up. Let's get the opacity down, just so it doesn't look like there's really big strokes. Like that in the 8 map. Now let's try it out on a plane. The scale 4. Okay, that looks fine, but the thing is, we don't usually paint on those sides of the painting, so we need to like stop the painting at some point and let's see the canvas underneath. So to do that, first we're gonna clean this up. So become 8. And to do that, we are actually going to use some uniform color. Going to be some beige, bright off-white color. Something like that. And blend it. So this is going to be our background and this is going to be our foreground. And now all we have to do is to create that mask in the border. Maybe we can let it to 1. Yeah, that works too. And if we want to do that, yep. Okay, just checking if everything works. So to create that mask, we actually need that shape, and we're gonna use some branch map. We're gonna use, let's it in number 2. The balance will be okay, contrast a bit less, and a brush pattern, like so, just so it gives us that jagged look on the outer part. Something like that should do. So now we actually need the centerpiece to be totally white, so we're going to level it. So we still have those nice edges, and to get rid of those tiny shapes, black shapes in the label, we can simply reuse that shape. I'm gonna copy paste it. And put it on a screen mode on top of it, and so we can just move the scale to 0.96, so we keep those edges and the center is totally white. Let's drag this all the way here and use it as our mask input. So now we get that nice bright colors underneath and the painting on top of it. Perfect. The thing is, since we took off the yeah, we need that thing to be 0.99. to get that bevel, right? So how to keep that bevel happening without having those, as you can see, those black dots all the way around? I think we could transform that one. Just a tiny bit. Yeah, so we get the bright colors all around and still have that that height working. That works for me. Okay, now that we have all our things, let's try a last time to see if everything works. Bit clean. And now let's say we want that thing. So it still gets dark on top and bottom because we need that we need our shape at the beginning right here to be right here too at some point. So let's say instead of that shape, we're gonna use that one. Get it inverted. But that's a bit better. Still have those dark patches on top and bottom. Let's see how it looks. It's okay, it doesn't really get any color looking weird. Okay. Now, the idea is whatever you plug in that gives you a painting, right? So let's try with another picture to see if we get the same kind of results. Let's take that one, pink. And replace it. Ooh, now we got some really bright pink colors. Let's take that back to 1. Okay. Now, imagine you'd like it to be a more abstract looking painting, right? We would need probably less brush stroke. So the way we can do it is by changing the amount of instances that we have. The thing is, we have to get those two exactly the same for the normal map, matching the base color. So what we have to do is get those parameters exposed, and since we copy pasted that same tile sampler, it's going to be like the two x's and the two y's will be associated with one another. So if we expose, for example, that one, let's let it called x amount, okay, and that one let's expose and call it y amount, okay. Now let's take a look at that one and say expose that one, and instead of calling it x amount underscore 1, we're still going to give it the name x amount. That way it's going to be linked with the first one. So let's simply select that and OK. And same thing with the y amount. So expose y amount. OK. So now if we double click somewhere in the graph and get back to those parameters, let's see if we get a lower number of brush strokes, let's say 50. Now we got some more, some longer strokes that gives a really nice look. Let's take those y amounts to 80. Now it starts to get like some really random colors that are looking really cool. Maybe we could work around with the rotation too. So let's go in the base color first. In the rotation section and put the rotation on expose again as rotation. And same thing with that one. Rotation, expose, rotation. Okay. Now let's take a look right here. That is a slight change. But the color follows the normal map, so that's all we wanted for now. Okay, so since that works, let's see how we can improve on those colors a bit and see how they can blend together a bit more. To do that, there's actually some great parameters right here. First, we can swap the opacity around them just a bit to see how it blends together. Okay, and let's see what happens if we put some random in the U. Oh, it creates some nice looking things. That one is maybe a bit too close up for our picture. Let's go back to our path. Ooh, that creates some great blues around here. Looking nice. So, now that we have worked on those scale parameters, maybe we should take a look too at the scale of the brushes themselves. So maybe we could expose that too. Let's go back there in the size section and expose the scale. Like so. And same on that one. Now let's say you would like bigger strokes. That looks okay, but the 8 is now looking a bit flat. So let's see if we can improve that. Maybe it's coming from there. Let's try to use that one and blend that thing on top. Okay, let's see too if we plug that one right here. We get more noise, but it's still kind of flat. We actually sloped that part, but not that part, so maybe it's coming from there. Let's try it out. Let's get a slope blur. And we need that thing blurred with this one. And this one is to 32 and 0.07. Let's make the exact same thing. 0.07. And replace it. Let's move it a bit and blur that thing. That's looking a bit better. So all we did now is add a bit more volume, like inflating that shape that we had in the beginning, and blur it just so it gives enough grace to create a ramp, and so we can read those volumes at the beginning. There's maybe a bit too much noise in there, but we can change that. Okay, I think what we need now is to sign that chef-d'oeuvre and call it a day. So to create, I have a pretty simple and basic signature, so I am going to use the node that you can find on Flip Normal that is called Hair TG Tremble right here. It's supposed to be used to create hair alphas, but yeah, we can do whatever we want with it actually. So this one is gonna be right here. This one right here. Like so. Now that we have that, it's actually going to be transformed and put in a tiny corner. So I'm going to blur it just so it gets a bit thicker. Put some level on top. Something like that. and then transform it to place it in the right place. Oops, there's a lot of those. Right here. And usually in paintings, the signature is not on top of everything, but it's actually creased inside the levels of paint. So we're gonna do the same and create normal out of it. But since it's the signature in white on top of a black background, it's gonna look like it's going out of the painting, and I want the opposite, so let's just invert it. So my normal map is the good way around. Let's blend it like so, using that mask. So we actually need it to be right here too. So to get the canvas color underneath, we will need to blend that same color using our new mask right here. Replace it like so. Oh, I made a mistake here. This needs to be right here, and that one needs to be on top and on the screen mode. Yeah, now we get some variation. That's really tiny, but I think this will do the work. And the signature is right here. Let's move the opacity a bit. And to get the effect that, since that part we removed paint, it's gonna dry a bit faster. So let's get a look at our roughness. It got a little bit too matte, so let's get it back. And then we can blend that thing on top on a screen mode, just so it looks dry already. Like that. Now let's get back to our previous thing. So we were at, let's say, 150, and that one to 200. That's a really big signature right here. And voila. And that is how you create a painting generator for no reason. That one looks really pink. It gets some really nice tiny dots of colors. Anyway, I hope it was helpful and that you'll get probably inspired maybe not doing the same thing, but getting some ideas from it. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.